Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real honour and privilege to be invited to speak here today. I'd like to thank Leonard, Mary Rose, the board and the entire team and the community involved in this project for all that you've done to celebrate Ireland's role in what is a technological revolution. I know it's been a labour of love for everyone involved, and I think it's going to pay huge dividends for this community. So Ireland is a small country with a small population. Despite our size, though, we punch way above our weight on a global stage. We're recognised around the world as an open and innovative society, cherished, if not loved, for our ability to work with others. And to achieve this kinds of recognition, a country needs to have something really special going for it. We need a superpower that can discriminate us in the eyes of the world and help us achieve things that are beyond our scale. And I think we've heard some great calls to action in that regard today. And in reflecting on the title of this talk, I cast my mind's eye back to about 5 years ago when I was asked a question by Mark Redmond, who I know has been very significantly involved in this project, just before the Ireland's Edge conference in Dingle. And he said, "What is Ireland's superpower?" And I said, "I think it's connectedness." When I visit Kerry and other places in Ireland that are more physically remote from the rest of the world, it actually deepens my sense of connection that Irish people have with the world. You know, there's a wistfulness and a regard for our place in the world that you don't find in other places. And that comes from shared culture and shared values. And it's wonderful how we build connections all across the world based on those shared values. So I want to start with the story of a connection I experienced. I'm going to apologise that I'm using the other UNESCO World Heritage Site, but Ireland's early societies built what is now the UNESCO World Heritage Sites around Newgrange 5,000 years ago. And given the ambition that you have for this project, I wanted to use that as the example today. I entered the offices of a leading US tech multinational for a meeting with an advisor to the CEO. And the setting couldn't have been more high-tech. You know, it's this glass and steel building in California, to give you a hint. Beautiful place, and everyone's rushing around, and they're all young and tech. And we were in to meet this advisor, a man with a Greek name. And we suddenly heard a shout from across the lobby. And he said, "Are you the boys from Erna?" The man was a Greek emigre who had spent a long time in the US. And we knew we were in for something completely different to the usual tech conversation we have. Our purpose there was to talk about Ireland as a location to invest for this company. His purpose was to talk about the spirals of Newgrange. This man became fascinated with spirals. Himself and his brother grew up in wartime Greece, and his brother was an illicit radio operator in post-war Greece, and they used spiral antennas. He emigrated to the US. I think his brother stayed in Greece, though I don't think we ever got to the bottom of that story, but he studied electronics in the US, became an incredibly successful electronics engineer, continued to develop advanced communication systems in various companies in the US, but he retained a deep interest in spirals and the mathematics of spirals. And he went, and then he delved into their history. So he went back to, where did these spirals come from? What's the history of them? And while we talked, that first meeting, he drew connections between Newgrange and Near Asia, which is east of his country. He postulated how those spirals might have come to be shared between those locations. He also said that the triple spiral, which was his deep fascination in Newgrange terms, was unique to Ireland. And it's something that he had done deep global research. I've never met anyone who's delved so deep in spirals in such a surprising context, or at all. But I'd never given much thought to this topic, but I was fascinated at how this man's research, with no cultural or other connection, had led him to Ireland. And I was even more taken aback by the parallels between our society 5,000 years ago and Asia, that those cultural things could have been shared back then. The man did visit Ireland months later, and he visited his beloved spirals at Newgrange, and his company invested in Ireland. Now, the two weren't directly connected, but I believe that the common ground we established through that should never be underestimated, and it certainly helped us build the relationship. I was inspired by the man himself and his story, his personal story. There was a lot of personal struggle about wartime, and his father was a guerrilla and coming home at night to say hello to his family and off again. Huge interest in the person himself. But what stuck with me is that connection he made to Ireland through our heritage. And the work of those ancient societies, millennia later, being the core of someone's new connection with Ireland, I just think that's really special and resonant today. I was further intrigued when I met a very different colleague of his a couple of months later, an Israeli man. He set a very high bar for what he felt was a good technological innovation. We spent 2 days with him. This is my IDA phase of my career, to Leonard's point earlier. Spent 2 days with him trying to convince him there was anything that Ireland did well. And he was a typical Israeli, well, show me the next thing, this doesn't impress me. We finally cracked him, though, when I found out that he was a former naval officer of submarines. I asked him, did you know who invented the submarine? I don't know, some American guy. And I said, no, it was an Irishman, John Holland, from County Clare. And it changed the relationship overnight. From the airport the next morning, this was our parting shot over dinner. And from the airport the next morning, he texted me in Irish to thank me for the connection. So it's amazing how these things, the importance of having a national story that's preserved and celebrated, and connecting that to modern technology and economy, it sounds outlandish, but it's something I never underestimate. And during the past 2 millennia, we've seen Irish saints, scholars, inventors, adventurers, artists, and others spread learning. You mentioned this, Norman, earlier. Spread learning all over the world. Ireland has become known from medieval times as an information society that preserved learning and created connections to share it. As I mentioned to the Canadian ambassador on our first meeting, my mother taught on an Indian reservation in British Columbia for 2 years as a missionary. So she had that connection, and so many people of her generation went out to far reaches of the world to spread learning. Now, they weren't always positive experiences, but in most cases, there were people going to do the best they could for the societies they visited. And those were very low-tech ways to spread the Irish message. The huge accelerator, unfortunately, of Ireland's cultural spread throughout the world wasn't for good reasons of choice. In the 1840s, the population of the island of Ireland was 8 million. That was just about half the population of the United States at the time. It's now recently just exceeded 7 million again. Ireland's population in the 1940s, as we know, was decimated by hunger and poverty, leading to worldwide emigration. Millions of people left Ireland, bringing their stories and their songs to the places in the world that they went to. And going back again to Dingle, Philip King, whom many of you I'm sure will know in the room, tells this wonderfully. And he's embodied that cultural connection, especially with the United States, in his work on Other Voices in Ireland's Edge. But in effect, as I mentioned, we are a society that has spread our learning and our culture in the lowest tech way possible for a very long time through human connection and migration. This has led to Irish people being held in that very high regard, and I think loved around the world. And I don't say the word loved lightly. I think there is a connection with Ireland that's quite unique, no matter where you go in the world. Now back to the topic today. In 1858, Ireland was established at the heart of a global technology revolution, with the establishment of the first connection between Valentia and Newfoundland. This led to an industry that continued for far longer than anyone could have anticipated in the context of technological revolutions. I worked, as Leonard said, for 17 years as a telecommunications engineer. I have slight post-traumatic stress from all the technical content that Camino showed me. There's lots of stuff coming back as I watched you talk earlier. But this industry has always moved at a lightning pace, and I'm surprised how much I remembered as well. I might get my old job back at some point. But that industry moves very fast. And in that context, that the cable station here persisted and flourished for nearly 100 years is very remarkable. What's also worth noting, as Camino pointed out very positively, is that Ireland managed to continue to operate this infrastructure despite global geopolitical and economic upheaval, something that is no mean feat at any time, and particularly for a country that was going through the kind of catharsis that we were at the time. I think, though, that respect for economic certainty is a key asset for Ireland and continues to this day. We're a people who realise the importance of the continuity of the things that move the world forward. We looked at the pictures today of the cable landing, and what was painfully obvious was, apart from those in top hats observing the landing and those pulling the cable in, is the poor kids in bare feet. They were watching it. They didn't know what it was. They didn't live in the world of technological advancement. I was speaking at a conference in Singapore last November, and someone asked me, why does Ireland care about this stuff? Why do you have IDA and Enterprise Ireland? Why have you invested so much in economic development? And I hadn't thought about this answer or given it before, but I said, because my parents went to school with kids who went to school in their bare feet. And I think that's something, I think that is why an economic asset like this is so cherished at the heart of a community, because it brings aspiration, hope, and wealth to somewhere that hasn't had it. And lots of places in the world underestimate that. I think perhaps we also in Ireland understand the things that connect us with other people and cultures, and we maintain a bond with those who left, and that's another source of our huge connection, that we have that longing for the diaspora who left and they for us. But this cable station was a great sign, in my view, of what was to come for our nation and our economy, and it was by no means the only one. In the 1840s, the largest telescope in the world was built in Burke County, Offaly. We had Irish-based scientists, and Irish scientists, inventing Boolean algebra and quaternions, the foundations of key modern digital technologies, including the ones that Nicola talked about earlier. And I believe these days we underestimate the cultural value of technological innovation. As Norman said, we're a country that has achieved prosperity and growth that's beyond anything that we considered possible. Our level of growth and the strength of our national finances are commented on and are the envy of the entire world. We have a record low unemployment level in this country of 3.8%, despite our population being higher than it has been since the foundation of the state, and almost 50% higher than in 1990. Much of this growth has been fueled by the visionary and very often quoted policies founded by T.K. Whitaker in the late 1950s. This openness to the world led to inward investment and led to economic prosperity and receptiveness to business. But at its heart was a realization that Ireland needed to be connected. Only through international trade could this small country of ours achieve its potential. And we've seen huge peaks of prosperity as a result. Exports-focused jobs in foreign direct investment and Irish-owned exporting companies now total well over 500,000 of those in the overall economy. And those are good jobs, and they're very secure, through ensuring that we have markets that extend well beyond our small local economy and what it can sustain. Exports by Irish-owned firms supported by my organisation surged 19% last year to 32 billion euros, up from 8 billion euro 25 years ago when EI was established. This included export growth in all regions of the world. And this year, up to the end of June, we had 120 new investments in overseas locations from Irish companies that we serve, setting down roots in other countries to enable prosperity here and there. These twin pillars of foreign direct investment and Irish-owned enterprise will, in my view, continue to be really vital to the future of this country and the prosperity. Maintaining a focus on progress through openness and international connectivity is vital to our economy, and it's vital that as our generations don't remember the barefooted children, that we maintain that openness and we maintain that focus on the economy. This growth has been fueled to a very large extent by digital technology. We were fortunate in the 70s and 80s to have investments from analog devices, from Apple, from Dell, from Microsoft, from Intel, at a time when those companies were still, many of them in their infancy, in their home locations. This followed in the early 2000s with Microsoft, Google, and Amazon all selecting Ireland for their first data centers in Europe. These companies now dominate the growth of global digital technology through providing the cloud infrastructure that most of the digital services we use daily run on. And winning these investments at a key moment in the latest wave of global tech depended to a large extent, and Camino has mentioned this, on a very strategic investment, very related to the topic we're talking to today, connections by cable. Ireland in 1999 signed a deal more than 30 years after the closure of the station here that was a far-sighted investment in fibre optic communications capacity. It was expensive and it was risky, but it led to a growth story that put Ireland at the forefront of global technology growth in Europe. That growth also had huge dividends for Irish companies who served those. So huge growth we've seen from Irish construction, electrical, mechanical, and other service companies who work on data center and indeed semiconductor plants, and have been able to take that expertise global after they built their experience here in Ireland. I remember an executive from a global data center company telling me that no matter where he goes in Europe, Middle East, or Africa to a data center construction site, it's Irish accents everywhere. Because that was positive, actually, it wasn't meant badly. The companies operating, Microsoft, Google and Amazon operating massive data centers in Ireland also employ over 20,000 people directly in very well-paid jobs in this country. And the companies like Kirby's, HMV, like Winthrop Engineering, the construction electrical companies employ thousands more in Irish-owned companies. And I believe we're only at the beginning of the potential of that industry for Ireland. But all these things happened because Ireland took decisions. We took decisions to be stable and business friendly. We took decisions to build a niche in early stage global technology. We took decisions to invest in infrastructure. All of these decisions have recognized the need to be connected. Ireland went out in the world through IDA and Enterprise Ireland, through Department of Foreign Affairs, through Tourism Ireland and others, and sought to embellish the reputation of our country and to emphasize our openness and our connectedness to the world. And we've benefited in turn from huge economic dividends. We've also benefited from a technologically advanced society, and I know Norman touched on this as well, where our workforce is tech aware and globally mobile. We have an increasingly significant number of new innovative enterprises also starting in Ireland and growing globally from here. Enterprise Ireland, for our part, is working very hard to ramp up the number of entrepreneurs supported. We grew the number of entrepreneurs we support, the early stage startup businesses, by 30% last year, and we intend to hold that number and grow it further in the coming years. And when Irish firms trade globally, we're recognised as understanding how global business is done. And that is down to the heritage that we've established of that openness, bringing firms in, creating our prosperity from the outside in. That's led us to really understand how business cultures work around the world and to be able to operate in them and have further success. So it's a really positive flywheel effect. If you engage with the global economy, if you make your country its home, you then become a part of it in a way that other more insular societies are not. But I believe the best is yet to come for Ireland. We have a really strong base of companies invested here from across the world, and that base is very diverse across industry. I think that'll continue. Foreign direct investment will continue to be really important to Ireland and to how we grow into the future. But I believe, partly because it's my job to believe it, but also because I do believe it, that Irish-owned enterprise, my area of focus, is growing very strongly with increasingly high ambition and will become the primary force in our economy over time. Our domestic economy is robust and we have a confident young workforce. So taking all of that together, I believe we can be really happy about where we are. But I think, as again Norman said, I won't keep harking back to you for too long, but you did say we cannot be complacent about the future. Ireland's success has come about because we are always searching for the next wave, the next frontier of investment, and I believe this needs to continue. Whether Newgrange being built in the time of before the pyramids, or this cable station being built in the 1850s and 1860s, or Google deciding to invest in Ireland in 2003, our openness to explore the edges of what's possible is what makes us a superpower in my view. My particular priority is seeing Irish-owned companies grow and succeed globally, and we've set any amount of targets for this in our strategy. But Ireland has remarkably created some brilliant global leaders. Kerry Group becoming a global leader from this very county, CRH, Ryanair, Icon, largest clinical trials company in the world, and I could go on, but I believe we should be hungry for more. I believe we can see new and further generations of such firms. You've heard from Norman about his business briefly, and I know you didn't major on your business, Norman, but Norman's an incredible entrepreneur who's the experience of multiple businesses behind him and is someone who is creating a business now that will disrupt the future and that will help to save our planet. And that's the kind of spirit and entrepreneurship I think that will create the next wave of growth for Ireland. But we'll only do this if we have an economy that's based on technological innovation and that is globally connected. We are too small to succeed if we don't bring exceptional value to those we trade with. And Nicola mentioned this earlier. She talked about productivity. A high-cost country like ours must be productive and must be bringing value all the time, and understanding how we add that value and where we can play a significant increasing part in the global economy will be absolutely crucial. But I think maintaining an increasing connection is a key element of achieving that. We need to continue to invest in infrastructure, skills and research. We need to foster an environment where the best and the brightest entrepreneurs can flourish and grow globally. My organisation exists to help companies start and grow in Ireland. As Leonard said, we have nearly 40 offices outside Ireland, and they are at the disposal of Irish companies to help their growth stories become the next stories of the world's, not just Ireland's economy. And I'm seeing increased ambition and confidence among Irish entrepreneurs and companies, and I anticipate this will continue to grow over time. So this project, I believe, is the celebration of the first transatlantic cable, continues to represent and embody that ambition and resilience. I'd like to finish by congratulating again the wonderful community that has rallied around this, all of the people who have given freely of their time, their energy, and their commitment to make it happen. And I wish you every success. Thank you once again for inviting me, and I wish you every success.